All right. Well, welcome back. This is period 2 of our IFAN broadcast. And today we have a very, very special guest with us, uh, a man who needs no introduction, but after a noteworthy 688 game NHL career and actually a remarkable post career life of ups and downs and comebacks. We'll get to all that, but what we'll do is we'll just introduce him as who he is, Mr. Chris Nilan from Boston, Rangers, Bruins. I think now he's in Montreal, hanging in there. And Chris, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, good to be here, but
I know you had a long trip behind you, and on top of everything else with your busy schedule and everything like that, this is greatly appreciated. So we'll get right into it for you. 688 NHL games, nothing to sneeze at there. You played with Montreal, the Rangers, Boston from 79 to 80, and all the way to 91 and 92 with a Stanley Cup ring to show for it with Montreal. With a guy like yourself with such a large story to tell, I like to always go back to the foundation, to the beginning. And with you, Chris, you grew up in Boston, tough neighborhood, just like one might see in the movies, you know. And your dad was a Green Beret, and your family life obviously influenced your formative years. Why don't you give us a little background on you?
yeah, I grew up in Irish neighborhood, predominantly Irish neighborhood. It was one of the actually nicest sections of the city, not without, some of those inner city problems you find throughout different neighborhoods. But I certainly fell in love with the game of hockey as a young kid when Bobby Orr came to town. Bobby Orr took Boston by storm. It's like Boston, like New York, all the sports teams, you got all of them, and there's certainly a big rivalry there, New York and Boston. Boston hates New York, New York hates Boston. That was bred in me at a very young age. I think it's more fun than anything. When you look at the rivalries, Rangers, Bruins, Knicks, Celts, all that, Yankees, Red Sox. But I would like to throw the Jets and the Patriots in there, but I don't think we can.
And the Mets.
But yeah, just growing up in that neighborhood, it was always as a kid we played street hockey, played basketball on a schoolyard, all that stuff, and I had a good childhood. Certainly, my dad was awesome as far as introducing us kids. I had a brother and two sisters to different sports and different things. He was certainly a disciplinarian, and in my case, certainly something I needed as a young kid. My father was really tough on me. I was a wild kid, and I sometimes I think back and I question some of his methods, but it's something I certainly, looking back, needed, because I could have ended up going in a whole other direction. And, I got in lots of trouble growing up. I was fighting all the time. I had quite a few incidents where I ended up before a judge. And, so Dad was, he was tough on me. And looking back, I thank God he was, because I probably would have never come close to living my dream of playing the National Hockey League. And, once I saw the Bruins, and once I saw Bobby Orr, and the whole thing, once I started skating and playing hockey, that's all I ever wanted to do. And this was awesome. So it was great neighborhood to grow up in, a lot of fun, without certainly difficult times, but my parents did everything they could to help us kids get ahead in life. They were married young, my mom and dad. My mother was 17, my father was 18. They had a child, and starting out like that, very, very difficult. I couldn't imagine it. When I was 17 years old, I mean, like I said, I was going before the judge. It's crazy. And I had a judge actually. Growing, I grew up Pee Wee hockey, Bantam hockey, and then I ended up playing for an actual judge who was a big part of my life. He was a coach of mine that took a keen interest in me and helped, along with my parents parenting me. He also helped guide me and did some things for me that, looking back, were pivotal in my development as a player, and me getting the opportunities to move ahead in hockey. And I can get into that. But yeah, so, it was great growing up where I did. I live in Montreal now. I miss being home, but I get home quite a bit. And yeah, life is good.
Interesting stuff. You wound up playing Greater Boston Youth Hockey League. Was that what it was called back then when you were getting into your Pee Wee?
Well, when Orr came to town, they built a lot of rinks. They were called MDC, Metropolitan District Commission rinks, because they only had the Boston Skating Club at one time, and then Harvard, BU, Northeastern. But when Orr came to town, hockey just took off. People got crazy with hockey, so they started putting rinks up in different neighborhoods as a way to, give kids an opportunity to do something other than hang around the street corner. I'm sure you guys know what that's like.
Of course.
And they built one up the end of the street from where I live, which was awesome. But the city of Boston also they started a couple leagues, at Boston Neighborhood Hockey League and the Boston Neighborhood Basketball League, BNBA and BNHL. And I started first in Charlie Doyle League, which is, small house league that started. That's where I first started playing. Then I went Boston Neighborhood Hockey League, and then I ended up playing on an all-star team from around Boston that played all around, suburbia. And yeah, so it was good. The great stepping stone, a great beginning for me, honestly, to play with those teams.
Yeah, and you had to have been doing something right. I mean, you wind up playing college hockey at a time where not a lot of NHL players were getting dragged out of college at that point. You were one of the few guys. You were in
right?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to get at. I mean, you can kid around all you want. You had to have been doing something right. I mean, and I don't mean just with your fists, but you had some good stats. I'm looking at them. 20 goals, 28 assists, 48 points in 72 games. That's pretty damn good as a hockey player. Plus, and I love this story, and I'm only going to mention it so you can explain it. While you were there, you showed what a tough guy looks like. You got in your shares of brawls and and fights and sticking up for your teammates. You're a real teammate of character. But there was an exhibition game with Boston where you actually got into it with a couple of your heroes, I think, right?
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I don't believe it was exhibition. This is the
college.
NHL. You're talking about the NHL now.
No, you were playing in college, and didn't you play the Bruins in an exhibition game?
Oh yeah. Oh, okay, that one. I actually didn't, but let me preface it by saying, I played high school hockey, Catholic Memorial, and I was there for 4 years, and I was like 17 years old most of my senior year, and I was going nowhere after school. My grades weren't good enough. I wasn't, good enough player to be recruited by colleges. And my friend, the Judge Paul King, he ended up sending me and helping me get into prep school, along with my dad up in Lake Placid, New York. I went to prep school for a year. And I went up there and played. And the last game of the season, we played at Boston College. We played their JV team. And after the game, the judge was there, and he was with Fernie Flaman, former Boston Bruin, and Fernie coached Northeastern. So after the game, he said, "Listen, when you graduate, I'd love you to come and see me about maybe coming to Northeastern to go to college." And I did. I graduated. I came home. I went, met with Coach Flaman, and gave me a full scholarship to Northeastern University. And that came because of the judge. That's it. Bottom line. Had nothing to do with me as a player, because again, I wasn't the best player. I wasn't a recruited player. That was all Judge King and Fernie Flaman, which was awesome. So, you know, then I was at Northeastern, and we did play an exhibition game against the Bruins. And, you know, the last thing I wanted to do was start any shit, and I didn't. We had a player on the team, Mark Coates. He's a little sentiment, and he's a feisty little guy. And Coatesy ended up, and they were doing us a favor coming over and playing an exhibition. Some guys take it serious. It's like when I was retired, I played in some games, and some guys take it serious. They feel like they got to measure up somehow, you know, instead of just going out moving the puck. And so Coates, Mike Milbury was coming up the boards with the puck, and Coates hip checked him, like, and went low into him. And boy, then everything come around, and they jumped off the bench, and O'Reilly come out, and I come in, and I ended up with him. We didn't fight. He just gave me a look like, "Kid, you don't want to do this." And you know, I was thinking about it, but honestly, I didn't want to do it, and it wasn't because I was scared. It was just I thought what Coach did was just stupid, and it was stupid. And the situation got diffused, and you know, they ended up leaving. It was embarrassing for the coach, for all of us. You know, they were doing us a favor, and you know, all it takes is one, right?
No,
And
that's for sure. I think we all seen it.
I mean, I'm sure if he had to do it again, Coachy, I don't know. Maybe he would have. Maybe I don't know. But maybe over time he's mellowed a bit.
Yeah, but maybe that was his 5 minutes that he got. They were still talking about it 50 years later, so maybe he's glad he did.
No, it was nuts.
Yeah. Well, you know, so here you are in college, and you know, in your own words, you don't, you know, you got help getting there, and you know, you're trying to stay out of trouble, kind of thing. You're trying to get something going. When did it dawn on you that you actually had a shot to get into the NHL? Because I don't care who you are and whether you're a fourth liner or whatever, to get that call and to actually make that team, you have to be you have to have some special something to get there and to be seen, to get there and stick. So when did you feel that you actually had a chance?
I didn't. I shouldn't say I didn't. I aspired to get to the NHL. How that was going to happen, I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to get there. Now, after my second year at Northeastern, and I didn't have, you know, flattering numbers. I did have a lot of, I had a lot of penalty minutes for college. Like I played physical, I played tough. You know, growing up in that environment I grew up in, watching the Bruins the way they played, I loved the way they played. Watching all those guys for years, you know, Big Bad Bruins, you know, the Broad Street Bullies, all that, and it really suited me and my mindset, my personality, everything, and the game itself suited me because it was physical, it was fast, it was tough, and I got drafted my second year at Northeastern, 1978, and you know, it's funny. I used to tell my father, "I'm going to get drafted," you know, and my uncle Ed Conley, and my father said, "The only way you're going to get drafted is if there's another war." And, my uncle Ed said, "You want a draft?" He said, "Go over there and open the window. You'll get a draft," you know. And it used to give me shit. And I got drafted. I got drafted in the 17th round. And it was 231st out of 234 players, right?
Wow.
And, you know, I think a lot of my teammates were shocked. How the heck? Because I played with a lot of Canadian kids at Northeast. Most of all the American kids went to BU, BC, or Harvard. And Northeastern was in a little bit of a tougher neighborhood, and they had a harder, more difficult time recruiting, right? So anyway, that year, I mean, so many Canadian guys on it. I think they were shocked because a lot of them guys want to play in the NHL too. You know, they thinking we're going to play in the NHL, and nothing against Canadian kids, but you know, back then they, you know, they thought they were it. Like, fuck, it's our game, you know. And there's still that rivalry there, certainly. And the U.S. is catching up in a big way, and they have caught up in a big way. But just, you know, getting drafted was huge. And here's how I got drafted. A lot of people think someone came and saw me. No one came and saw me. Actually, one scout, Richard Scammell, did end up coming down and looking at me. But when the judge passed away, I was retired, right? 90. I think it was 95 or 96. And I was at his funeral. And Dickie Moore came in, former Hall of Fame left winger for the Habs, right? And I knew Dickie in Montreal. He would always come up and talk to me. We had lunch a few times. Turned out that day, after the funeral, he went and grabbed a bite to eat, and he said, "Chris, the judge never wanted me to tell you this, but until he was dead and gone, he's the reason you got drafted." I mean, how was that? He said, "Well, we were friends." He was also a friend of Doug Harvey, who was, you know, Hall of Fame defenseman for the Habs. And Doug was a scout at the time. And Dickie came, the judge came and saw Dickie. They had lunch. They went out for a few drinks, and the judge was just talking me up. He said, "Listen, I got a kid that played for me, plays at Northeastern. Can you just get Sam Pollock to draft him? Take him with your last pick. I don't care. Just draft him." And that's how I ended up getting drafted. And funny, Dickie said to me, he said, "I've heard all sorts of stories about people, oh, get this kid, or this kid's unbelievable, and that kid." But he said, the judge said to me, "I guarantee you, if you draft," now this comes from a judge, also very partial to me. This guy was like, he was like a second father to me. And, you know, he had a family of his own. He sat in one of the most violent courts in the city, crazy court. He was the Chief Justice there. You know, we're not talking about a judge that's elected official. This guy earned his way there like crazy. And he said to Dickie Moore, he said, "Dickie, just draft Chris Nilan and he'll do the rest." So Dickie was like, "Oh yeah, sure. I heard this one before, Paul." And yeah, like it's an unbelievable story for me to hear that day. And I just, and listen, I was able to thank the judge and you know, just for all he did for me up to that point. But I only wish I knew that before he died, you know, be able to, because he meant so much to me. Like when I say he kept me out of jail a couple times, like big time, helped me out, steered me in the right direction. He's just a wonderful guy. But yeah, I would have never got drafted. I'm sure I would have never got drafted if it wasn't for Judge Paul King.
Well, I'm sure he'll looking at you and actually being able to see you throughout your career. That was a big feather in his cap, because I'm sure he was saying, "See, I was right about that kid."
Yeah, it was cool.
Well, once you get drafted and you get through all that, and I always like when we've been lucky enough to talk to a few guys that have played that first day of camp, and then that first game you had to play, that first regular season game. What was going through your mind when you first came into camp as that kid, And later on, after you made the team in that first game of yours.
I hated the Canadians. Even after I was drafted, they were going for their fourth in a row, right? And I stayed in school. I could have left. And I look back, I might have been a part of that fourth one. Who knows? But I really didn't like the Canadians. I remember coming up here the first time. It's crazy. It was so, here I am, Montreal Forum, Lafleur, Serge Savard, Guy Lapointe, Larry, the big three. Dryden had left, Lemaire left. Few guys. The team was starting to just splinter some. But that first camp was intimidating. I knew I wasn't there yet because I was trying to do some things I could do in college I couldn't do there. I was trying to run around a little bit and get physical to get noticed, and I was. I remember I hit Guy Lapointe once, and Steve Shutt coming back up the ice, and he gave me a two-hand. I turned around and gave him a two-hand back, but he wasn't going to fight me. But, he's like, don't hit the vets. I just wanted to get noticed somehow. And went through camp, back then just played round robin, 4 teams. And then camp's over, and they break you up in groups. And I remember at the last day of camp, they said, go in and take a picture. You got to go in and take pictures for the guidebook and all that. And I was one of the guys getting the picture taken. I'm there, shit, do I have a chance here? Like, why are they taking my picture? It's only a picture, but I figured, they're taking my picture. Maybe I'm in the book. Maybe I'm here. Anyway, I got sent down to Nova Scotia, which is fine because I didn't think I was going to be in Montreal, that's for sure. But I thought I got a shot at being in the system. And we got sent to Nova Scotia, and I went down there, and I didn't have a contract. I went to camp down there, and they got their ass kicked the previous season against Maine. They lost 4 games straight in the playoffs to the Mariners, who was Philly's farm team. And they had quite a tough team, right? And Montreal made a concentrated effort to get a bigger, tougher team down there to protect it. They had a lot of little guys that got shit kicked that year before. And so I went down there, went to camp, and after camp, I had no contract. So they said, listen, we're not convinced yet. We're going to sign you to a 5-game tryout for $200 a game. And I was happier than a clam in the sand. Like, I was just like, okay, I'm in. Then I don't play. Like, the first 4 games of the season were in Nova Scotia at the Metro Center, Halifax, and I didn't play. And I'm sitting this down there, when am I going to get my chance? Well, lo and behold, game 5's in Maine. And I'm going to play in Maine, my first game. My family come up, friends, and everybody. And I went out and I ended up running Glenn Cochran. You remember Glenn Cochran? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Big boy, Flyers.
Reigning heavyweight in the American Hockey League. And he slashed me. I slashed him back, and we dropped the gloves one out, and I cut him pretty bad under the eye. And he was bleeding and going nuts, and both of us went. We both get kicked out of the game. And I think I'm in trouble, right? I'm like, I get kicked out of the game. I throw my suit on. I go back to the hotel, and the next morning, the coach called me, Bert Templeton, and Bert says, hey, Chris, come down my room, see me. And I'm like, oh, shit, maybe I'm getting sent to Flint. So I come down the room, and he goes, great job last night. Really proud of what you did, standing up to that guy, blah, blah, blah. I mean, cool. He says, do you have an agent? And I'm like, no, I don't have an agent. And he said, well, you better get one. He said, because the Canadians want to sign you a contract. 1 fight, 1 game, and I had an NHL contract. It was pretty cool. Like I was like in shock. I didn't have an agent. I was scrambling, and I ended up getting one, and I got my first contract. One fight, one game, one fight, and then subsequent to that, I started to play a lot more. And once, like that traveled like wildfire around the league, right? That I fought Cochran and got caught by it. So I was like, who is this guy? And it's not like I came in thinking, oh, I'm going to be a fighter. I'm going to fight as much as I did. But every game, I was getting challenged, or I was challenging someone for whatever reason. And, I played with Rick Maha, who was an unbelievable player, who got stuck in the Montreal system for 2-3 years. He was down in Nova Scotia. He was putting up over 100 points every year, like crazy. I ended up playing with him, and he benefited and I benefited. I ended up with 15 goals, and I had 25 points in 49 games with him. I mean, back in that day, for a tough guy, that even today for a tough guy, that would get you a $5 million contract. But back in that day, that was big for a tough guy, because there were guys who, yeah, they could fight, but they couldn't play, or you couldn't put them on the ice as often. And that was my goal. I could have never did what I did if I was sitting on the bench. I just couldn't do it. But that drove me even more. And playing with Rick was awesome. I ended up, 49 games. I had the points, and then I had 304 minutes in penalties. And they were like, Montreal was like, we got to get him out of there before he gets 600 minutes.
So I was gonna ask you, Chris, was that did you feel that was gonna be your role in order to get to the NHL? Was being more of the enforcer type, or did you really feel that you could play like both sides of the game and still get there?
Yeah, at the time, no. At the time, I just, because of the fighting, I thought that was more the reason I was getting called up. But looking back, the 15 goals, like that was huge. Back then they'd say you're a 20-goal scorer. You're pretty cool. That was 49 games. So, I knew it was going to be my bread and butter. But again, I wanted more. I wanted to play, and I wanted to, have a role. Other than just fighting. I wanted to be an effective player. And, I know I ended up doing that. I had lots of help. I had a lot of help, from coaches to the guys I played with, certainly from the American League up until Montreal, playing with Doug Jarvis, Bob Gainey, and then Bob Gainey and Guy Carbonneau for most of my career there. So yeah, I had a lot of help doing it, and it was awesome.
So your first NHL game, was that when you had your first NHL fight, or did it take a few games?
No, my second game. My first game was in Atlanta. I got called up around January, and then I went down to Atlanta, and they had a big team back then. They had, I think, and Willie Platt.
Yeah.
I only got a couple of shifts a period. It was like I kind of froze up. Like I'm here now. I kind of froze in the moment. I was overwhelmed, I think, a little bit. I was nervous. I'm like, am I good enough? Am I all the stuff I had learned in the American Hockey League? I just might as well throw it out the window. That first game, I was like, I choked the chicken on that one. And lo and behold, game 2 was in Philadelphia, and Claude Rell was coaching back then. Claude, he's awesome. One of my favorite people and coaches that really helped me at the beginning, big time. And he was a better assistant coach. He didn't like being a head coach, but he did it because, they let go of the coach, and he stepped up and was going to do it to the end of the season. But Bernie Jeffrion was coaching, and he got fired, and then he stepped in. But I remember we were there, and Philly started running around and was on the bench, and Claude, I hear him behind me, he said, "Yankee boy." He called me Yankee boy. Yankee boy, he said, "Don't be afraid of these men. They are men just like us." Give me the old pep talk. And I'm like, "Yeah, don't worry, coach." Right? I'm thinking in my head, and I look out on the ice, and just Bob Daly's like 6'5", Ben Wilson, just like us. I was clothed like 5'6". He's missing an eye, and I'm just like us. Anyway, I went out, and Bob Kelly, I went out, and they changed, and they put Bob Kelly over me, and he started giving it to me, and I fought him right off the face-off, and did well, and then I ended up assisting on the winning goal with PM Ondu scored my first NHL point, and I remember after the game, like I was like, I got an assist, I got in a fight, we won. I said, it was the first, I think it was first little shot of confidence I needed after that first game. I felt like, shit, maybe I can do this. I can do this, and then it just went from there,
Well, you left your mark on Bob Kelly that night, but throughout your career, you actually made a mark on the game. I mean, you look at your history, your stats. You're one of 9 players to rack up 3,000 plus penalty minutes. I mean, that's a lot of minutes, and there's no top 10. There's just 9 guys, right? And you're in it. Okay. Yeah. You had the record for highest penalty minutes per game, like 4.5 minutes, maybe over 4.5. He had the most penalty minutes in a single playoff season with 141. But I'd like to hear a little bit about this one, if you remember correctly, looking back, is you had the most penalties in minutes in a single game versus Hartford in '91, where you had 42 minutes, which included, I believe, 10 penalties overall, 6 minors, 2 majors, a 10-minute misconduct, and a game. So can you tell us anything about that particular game? Because it is in there as one of the top ones in history.
Yeah, it was crazy. That rivalry, Hartford, Boston, and they had a tough team. They had a good team, man. They had a really good team. They, Samuelson, Quenville on defense.
Deneen, I believe.
Yeah, Deneen, Ron Francis. They had a good team. Ray Ferraro, Dean Everson. They had a feisty, good hockey team. Michael Yu in net. And it was one of those fuck you games, It was I think it was the last game of the season or second last. I think it might have been the last home game. We were playing in the playoffs. So it was like, okay, let's throw down right now. And it just got crazy. It got crazy. I know I fought a couple times. I don't know if I got a major fit. I remember I elbowed Bobby Holik in the broke his nose. I don't know if they only gave me 2 minutes for that. I deserved 5, but then and this is terrible, but we were tied up in the corner. Little Rob Brown. Rob Brown played with Pittsburgh and Hartford. He was a good little goal scorer, but he had, like, everybody hated me too, but he was one of those guys that everybody's like, I hate that kid. He's a little yappy, and right. And he was losing his hair, and I didn't know that. But anyway, I was tied up with someone in the corner. We're fighting. He come in and started giving me this, so I grabbed him and threw him down. He's flailing away, and I end up pulling his helmet off. But in the process, I pulled his hair, and I pulled his plugs right out. He had plugs, and I was slapping his mouth. And I got in the locker room. I still had the hair in between my legs and between my fingers. And the trainer actually taped it up on the board. It's like Rob Brown's plugs. Oh my God. But story about that. I meet him later in life out in Edmonton at an event. He's the nicest guy you ever want to meet. He's a sweetheart. And I'm thinking, why is everybody? Well, I knew why, because it's just on the ice. You don't dislike people, but he was nothing what you thought he was like, right? You see him on the ice, you think this guy's this way. Not at all. He was a sweetheart of a guy. I felt bad, and well, your plugs. He had to have them redone, I think. But it was a crazy night. Like I said, it was one of them FU games, and we'll show you, and we're gonna, but they were a tough team too. They stood up for themselves, and we ended up beating them in the playoffs that year, which was nice. But then we ran into Pittsburgh.
So then you wind up playing 688 games at that kind of pace, sacrificing your body, not even counting the playoff games, I don't think. So you add that to the mix. You wound up banging out some pretty bad injuries towards the end of your career. I think it was said that you missed over 200 games, I think, in the last 4 or 5 years.
I wanted to play 1,000 games so bad. I'm like, I can get there. But boy, when I got to New York, the shit hit the fan for me. And again, I think a combination of just the wear and tear on my body, the way I played. It was like we played the Islanders. I think we played Philly first game, Boston my second game. I think the Islanders my third or fourth game was at Madison Square Garden, and I got tangled up with Trotz on the boards, and his knee caught the inside of my knee, and I felt a little wobbly, and I right off the hop I ended up I tore a ligament in my knee. I broke my arm twice. Where did I do it? Oh, I did it in Montreal. I went into the post. I broke my arm, and then I broke it again, and I actually tried to play the third period, and it was in the island, and I was looking back for a pass, and Baumgartner stepped up on me, and he brought a stick up, and I brought my arm up, and I broke my arm again right next to where I broke it before. And I wasn't sure what was going on. And then Roger Nielsen was coaching, and I tried to play a couple, and Baumgartner tried to fight me, and I couldn't because I couldn't even hold my stick. And he didn't know what was going on with me. And I couldn't fight him. I felt that's the first time I ever went the other way turn someone down. I just couldn't. I would have got killed. So, and we played an exhibition game the next season. He saw me before the game. He said, I didn't know you had a broken arm. I would have never, which was admirable. But yeah, so New York was just like a shit show injury wise. I had that hockey hernia. It was brutal. Like my body was starting to break down on me. I did the best I could whenever I was in there. And, I met some great teammates, and for me, I never wanted to leave Montreal, and it was hard for me. I don't know how guys do it. I know they say, oh, it's a business. I'm so goddamn loyal. I just never wanted to play for another team. After I was in Montreal, never did I want to go anywhere. And I remember like waking up in New York. I was like, how the hell did this happen? But looking back, I made that whole thing happen. I put Serge in a bad place by having a confrontation with Perron and saying some things to him that you probably shouldn't if you're a player. But, I always told myself I would never let a coach tell me to go fight or make that inference to me, which happened. And I had to stay true to myself. I did, and it cost me. But yeah, I was beat up in New York. Things started to happen that, man, it was difficult, really difficult dealing with that part of it for me.
So then you wind up taking another turn and winding up in Boston after all of this. And now you're in your hometown, back in your hometown, and you're on the team that you grew up rooting for, where all your heroes came from as a kid. did that kind of reinvigorate you, or were you still dealing with these injuries and you knew it was kind of towards the end?
It did reinvigorate me. I was excited to be back there. It felt weird. And, you know, looking back, I was near the end, right? If there was a time I should have played for them, it should have been at the beginning.
Right.
You know, I was right there. I was under their nose. But, you know, the judge made it happen that Montreal drafted me, right? The judge made that happen. So even if he didn't, the Bruins weren't going to draft me. So, because I really, you know, I wasn't even on their radar. Like Rod Langway, another one. He wasn't on their radar. He was on Montreal's radar, though. And so, you know, credit to them. But, yeah, getting back there, it did feel weird because of all the animosity over the years. My father didn't want me to come back. He said, screw them. The way, you know, all the shit that happened over the years, the Nilan sucks, screw them, don't come back. I'm their dad, but I wanted to be a Bruin, you know, and I come back. I should have listened to him, but the first year was great. I loved playing for Mike Milbury. I really like Mike. You know, I liked him as a coach. I think that he probably should have stayed there as a coach because I think he would have been more successful.
We probably agree with that here on the island, but that's okay.
Listen,
same thing.
Mike Milbury's a smart guy. He's a bright guy. He's outspoken. I really like Mike, and I know he struggled there. Some people think he may be a little arrogant, but Mike's a bright guy. He has balls to speak up in a lot of situations, you know. I think back to, you know, when we were playing. He's the only guy who had the balls to speak up and speak out against Alan Eagleson. Everybody's telling him, shut up, Milbury, shut up. Well, we know what happened there. He was right on the money, and he had the balls to say it. Because he is, again, smart guy. Colgate, right? Brilliant. But Mike was awesome. And I go through a wall for him. He's one of them coaches I just would. And he ended up probably through the season coming to me and saying, listen, I'm coaching the All-Star team this year.
I was going to ask you about that.
I'm going to name you. And I'm like, well, the first night, opening night coming out, I was nervous for the game because, you know, everybody's screaming, yelling, Nilan sucks for years. All of a sudden, I was nervous. How are they going to react to me? You know, I just was. And Ray Bork was like, relax, you're going to be fine. They're going to love you, blah, blah, blah. And certainly I come out. It was kind of cool to come back home and get the applause from the people who friggin' hated you for so many years. And then, you know, just, where was I before?
All-Star game?
The All-Star game, yeah. Mike, you know, I was okay. I was still doing my job and fighting and, you know, playing hard. And Mike came up to me and said that in practice on there. I'm not naming the All-Star. He said, no, I am. He said, I can pick a couple players. I'm picking you and I'm picking Brian Skrudland from the Canadians. And I'm like, come on, I'm not an All-Star. He said, Fred, I admire what you've done. Brian, you're a big part of your team, both of you, is like huge. And he said, I'm going to name you. And sometimes I thought maybe, but see, that's Mike. Mike's not afraid to do shit that other people wouldn't think of doing, right?
And he was loyal, too, to the guys that were loyal to him.
Yeah. He was really, again, I like him. And I didn't when I played against him. I'm like, yeah, because I didn't like any of the Bruins. But Mike was good to me. And anyway, I ended up breaking my ankle playing basketball on the parquet. Imagine.
Jeez.
So I get named the All-Star, gonna go to the game, and we're going through a little turbulent time, weren't winning games, and he called us in. He said, "You guys don't want to work at night. I'll show you what it's like to work 9 to 5. Come in tomorrow. Be ready to go at 9." So we get in there and we go through game tape. We're on game tape. He's pointing this out, pointing that out, where guys fucked up and turned away or didn't finish their checks or, just going through everything, fine tooth comb. And it's like 11:45. He said, "Okay, you can go to lunch now. Go ahead, be back here by 1:00, and we'll go through the rest of the day." So I go walking out the locker room, and I hear, and I'd never been on the parquet. Like, I've seen it. I've been to Celtic games. I've never been out there. I hear ball bouncing. So let's go out and play some hoop. I go out, some of my teammates there. We end up playing. And we game a 3-on-3. And I end up jumping up to block a shot, and I come down on someone's ankle. And I broke my talus bone in half. Oh. And the worst part about that was they took an x-ray and there was so much blood and stuff in there they couldn't see the fracture. They were trying to get me back on the ice. I'm doing therapy and walking on it. I skated 3 times. And I was in tears, right? I would come in, the guys are going, "You pussy," give me a hard time. I'd be in the trainer's room and they put you in that cold boot with the pressure. I'd be laying on the table going, and they, "Come on, just ice, and pressure." I'm like, okay. Anyway, they finally do an MRI on me after a month.
Oh, jeez.
A month. And they do the MRI and I have a compound fracture of my talus bone. I go in right away. Next day, I'm in surgery. They end up putting screws in it. And, it's a nightmare. But, I remember Mike wasn't happy because I didn't show up to the All-Star game. He wanted me to go. I couldn't even freaking walk. And I'm like, I just didn't, when am I going to go there? And I listen to every, and I didn't mind as long as I'm playing. I didn't want to go there and listen to every asshole who said, he's not supposed to be here, blah, 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 all the bullshit, all these, fucking dweebs who, anyway, don't get me going on that.
But that wasn't long before you decided to hang him up, right? So here you are with all these injuries kicking in. You wind up making that decision. How was that for you? Did you know it? It was an easy decision, or was something you had to come to terms with?
Well, the next year I was there. I had a couple of Rick Bowness took over. It was a great guy, Rick Bowness, but I had my issues with him. I was struggling with shit. He was a new head coach. We had a little difference of opinion on a couple of things. But anyway, great guy, Rick. Anyway, I got put on waivers later in the year. Montreal Serge picked me back up. Montreal. I came back, I finished my season there, and I wanted to play one more year. At least give it a shot. And then Pat Burns was there when I come back, and Burnsy got let go. When Burnsy got let go, the writing was on the wall for me. Demers came in. So I didn't get another contract. And looking back, I was right where I was supposed to be, retired, because it was, 34 years old. You're done. I don't care. Especially back then, even more so, because the way we played. Yeah. But 34, when you hit there, man, you got to be superstar athlete to play a little longer. Defensemen can play past that, I know, right? As long as you can still move the legs and you still have it up here. Like Chelios is a freak, right?
Right.
He's a freak. Some of those guys can do it. But boy, 34, I was done. And
you start understanding dog years by then, you know, like.
You wish, right? But that was difficult. But I accepted it and it moved on. It took me a little bit, but I struggled with it. That first year you're out, you're watching hockey, you're going like, oh, I could play, I can fight that guy, I can do it. No, you can't.
What were you thinking at that point, or you maybe towards the end of your career, the last few years? Did you ever have any idea what you might want to do after retirement? Were you thinking about coaching, or going into the business or something else?
Yeah, I wasn't. I figured I'll take a little time. I worked. It took about a year and a half. I didn't do anything. I was getting bored, and then I ended up going to work for John Hancock in Boston in community relations, Olympic projects. They were a big sponsor of the Olympics. I traveled around the States. I had an office up in the Hancock Tower, way up top, overlooking the city. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? I was like a fish out of water. And I was working with a guy there, said, listen, think of starting an insurance company up. Love to have you come aboard. I went and did that for about 6 months. I fucking hated it. It wasn't me. And yeah, I struggled.
So coming off of all that, excuse me, the long career, physical career, the injuries towards the end, which was starting to become a little overwhelming, and then the retirement, and then that whole twist of trying to, find your niche once it's over, well documented that you ran into some issues with the alcohol and the prescription drugs. Was that something that was already on its way before you retired and that you just didn't know yet, or was that all after the fact?
Not at all. It was all after the fact. I mean, I drank.
Yeah, that's part of it. Right?
In the 80s, 70s, 80s, up until then, the NHL was, come on, play hard, drink hard, play hard. That's how it was. Like, like one thing about Montreal, they never have alcohol in the locker room, on the road or at home. Never did. The only time was if you won the cup. And so that was a good thing, but there was enough of it around. And you could, after games on the road, you grab beers from the trainer, stick them in your bag, you get on the bus, have a couple of beers. Guys, it was part of the culture. Plus, I grew up in that anyway. So it really suited me. And I think a lot of guys in that era. But as far as the pills, one time in my career, I took painkillers, and it was when I broke my arm in Montreal. Because I had a compound fracture in my ulna. And we're flying home the next day to New York after the game. And they said, we cannot put a cast on you if you're going to get on the plane. And I'm there, well, I want to go back. I didn't want to stay in Montreal. I'm like, I want out of here. I was pissed. And so they said, we're just going to wrap your arm with an ace and put you in a sling, and here's some painkillers. And I had taken opiates before. I had a bunch of surgeries throughout in the off season. I had my knee cleaned out. When I was in high school, I had all my cartilage taken out of my right knee. So each year I had to have it cleaned out. But back in my younger years, I had a couple surgeries where they put you on Demerol for a fucking week in the hospital. It's like, so I knew how it worked. When I was in college, I had a staph infection in my hand from a fight on the street. And I was in the hospital. I remember they had me on Demerol. I was in there. I had 3 surgeries on my hand. And, I was on IV antibiotics, all that shit. And they had me on Demerol the whole time I was in there. They took me off it like the last 2 days I was there, wean you off. And I'm like, anyway, so I knew of it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm addicted to it, but boy, when I was in it and on it, and I didn't know at the time that anything about withdrawal or stuff like that. So yeah, I didn't. The only time in the NHL I took it was that one time in New York on the way back. I had to take it to get on the plane, and because I had that injury and no cast on it to stabilize it really. So that was the first time. And then in retirement, I had a bunch of surgeries, and you know, I got going. I'd be on the pills, and you know, didn't happen right away. But then another surgery, and next thing I know, I started taking them, and when I didn't have them, I was like sick as a dog. I started to withdraw. I didn't understand what was going on with my body. The signs were there, but I didn't know what they were. And I just knew one thing: if I had pills in my system, I felt okay. I wasn't sick.
Yeah, well, we learned that too with our older brother, as we mentioned to you early on, and he was an iron worker and took a fall, right? So he falls 4 floors and lives, but it fucked him up pretty good.
Yeah.
And again, he was on the painkillers and for every damn thing that broke on him. And I think in his situation, and you could let us know about you, was that he was drinking on top of the pills, but at the same time, his resistance to the pills started to build,
Oh yeah.
and he wound up finishing his prescriptions quicker. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
then he's out there in the black market trying to get them. And then it wasn't even so much to get high or to
Just
even to feel better. It was just to stop getting the
keep from
withdrawal
getting
or getting the
Yeah.
sickness.
yeah, it's a nightmare. And if you don't know anything about addiction, like you don't know what you don't know. You just don't. And same thing happened with me. You know, it's always more. You need more for the same effect, and then eventually, you just need them so you're not sick, and you kind of level. You know, but once that level that level feeling wears off, you start going down again and get sick, and then the next time it's not 2 every 4 hours, it's 4 every 4 hours, and then it's 6 every 4 hours, then it's 8, then it's 10, then it's before you know it, you're taking 30, 40 pills a day like a maniac, and and then Oxycontin came in, and you know that's just it was crazy that drug what it did, and you know I thought it was healthier for me, right? That's how crazy sick I was, yeah, and ignorant because I didn't know much about it, but you know taking Percocet, which I started on Percocet, all that Tylenol in the drug, I thought was not good for my stomach. When OxyContin come out and they market it as non-addictive, and not that made a difference with me, but there was no it was a synthetic form of the opiate,
Yeah.
and there was no aspirin or no Tylenol in it. So I'm like, oh, that's healthier for you. That's how crazy it got. But then I got into that, and just I felt I was trapped, and you know you drink too with it, but there comes a point like with me, and I can only speak for myself, but my drug of choice became the opiates over the alcohol. So alcohol wasn't even as much anymore. Yeah, I drank, but it wasn't the same drinking. It was, you know, I wanted opiates more than I wanted alcohol.
And then you wind up getting to the recovery aspect of it all. Now, and we know it through what we've seen, which pretty much starts with a person's rock bottom. Did you have a definitive one, or was it just a process that got you thinking, or did you finally have a moment where you said, you know, I gotta have to do something. I have to reach out? Because with our brother, we confronted him on a few occasions, and it was all denial and thanks a lot, but if I need you, I'll let you know. And eventually he did. But with you, was that rock bottom definitive for you?
No, I had a few rock bottoms. It was never bottom enough for me. I had to really have a fucking bottom to get my attention. For the first time I tried to get well, I was on the Oxycontin big time, and I had a teammate, Bob Gainey, who I bumped into, and he had heard, things which I didn't think anybody knew what was going on with me, right? I'm like, look, I'm sly, no one knows. And he asked me how I was doing. I'm okay, blah, blah, what are you doing? Oh, not much, blah, blah. He said, well, yeah, he gave me a card from a guy from the NHL. He said, if you ever need maybe help looking for a job or whatever, here's a card for you. And the guy's name was Dan Cronin. And he's the lead interventionist for the NHL. For years he was. And he's a Massachusetts guy. And he just gave me that card. Anyway, I had gotten to the point I was so beaten down. I had called him, and he said, I'll come meet you in Boston, blah, blah, blah. And of all days, I meet him. It was St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. And I meet him at the Boston Harbor Hotel. I come in, I'm already, I snorted like 580s already, Oxycontin. I was like out of my mind. He gets talking to me, asking me all these questions, how's it going, blah, 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 introduce himself. And I didn't know I was talking to a drug addict myself, because he was. He's clean and sober for years, but, I'm figuring I'm being elusive, and he's asking me all these questions. He goes, I know you had a lot of injuries. He said, what do you do for that? And you take aspirin, Tylenol, what do you? I mean, yeah, I'm usually Tylenol stuff. And if it gets really bad, I said I might take a couple Percocet here and there. And that's all I needed to hear. Plus, my eyes were fucking pinned. And he's just seeing right through me. So he asked me if I would go and see. He said he was flying back to LA, and he asked me if I would go and see a therapist down in south of Boston, down in a town called Duxbury. And I said, yeah, I'll go down. And I went down there, and after 2 visits, I was in a ball on the couch crying like I was a mess. The lady was really good. Dan had talked to her, said, yeah, you got to break him down. And she did. And I was on a plane the next day to LA and went into treatment for the first time. That was in 2000. And I got out, stayed sober. No, I stayed clean and alcohol free for about 3 years. I wouldn't call that sober at all. I wasn't. And I relapsed probably, just about 3 years in 2003. And then, I was drinking again, had surgery, I was back on the pills, and then 09, no, 08, 09, December 7, 2008, I got in a bad car accident on the way to Montreal. I was coming up here to see a doctor. It flipped. I got ejected from the vehicle. And that shook me. Still wasn't quite my bottom, but it shook me to the core. And I ended up going back to Boston, and I had a bunch of pills. And once they ran out, I'm like, I started to get sick. I'm like, oh. And I was buying pills off the street. And I ended up calling Dan Cronin because I had Dan's number. And I called him. He said, hey, who's this? I said, it's Chris Island. He goes, ooh, I've been waiting for your call. And he had me on a plane the next day and off to treatment again in Oregon. I went, stayed there for 3 months, and I stayed in Oregon. I didn't want to come back east. I just wanted to try and get well there. And I ended up doing well for about a year and no, 8 months, and I relapsed again. And I relapsed on alcohol, and then back on the pills, and then eventually heroin, snorting this shit, and yeah, it got bad. So I was living with my now wife out there, and we were both pretty sick. And I went back east to do a couple things, and when I got back east, I phoned her, and she didn't pick up. And I'm like, oh man. And I kept calling her. I thought she died. And I ended up eventually getting in touch with her a day and a half later. And she went back to Hawaii, where she's from. And she said, listen, Chris, you keep going like this, you're going to die. We don't have a chance. You got to do something about it. I'm getting well again. And I was like, I couldn't believe she was gone. I mean, I know I loved her, but we weren't, I mean, like we're never going to make it. There's just no way. And she made the first move, which was awesome because she saved herself first. God bless her. And, I flew back to Boston. I ended up getting a hotel room and living in a hotel. And I was doing, I was shooting heroin for like 3.5 months. Every day, just waking up, waking up. It was brutal. And I overdosed one night, and I got up. I remember coming to, and then I was just praying, and I was in the foxhole, and I'm praying to God, help me, please. I don't know what I was just praying. I didn't know if anything was going to happen, but I was I was asking, and I was asking for me, and I never asked for me before, when it came to praying, and not that I had this spiritual connection, but I was brought up in the Catholic Church. I did pray, always pray for other people, and this time I was praying for me, and I got up. I finally got myself into bed. It was probably like 4:30 in the morning when I came to, and I went into bed and fell asleep, and my phone rang around 1 o'clock, and it was Jamie, my then girlfriend. I wish she was my girlfriend, but she was in Hawaii, and she, I still had feelings for her, and she did for me. And she said, Chris, what the hell are you doing? You're gonna die, blah blah blah. You keep going like this, you're gonna die. I love you. I want you to get help. I want you to get well. And she said, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm getting you a ticket here. I have a guy here, former Vietnam veteran who was a heroin addict who became a doctor, and he worked in addiction. And she said, I'm going to get you a ticket to come here. Do me a favor and don't show up here messed up, which is a 12-hour flight. Gonna get sick. And I was desperate. Like I wanted to get out. And then I got on that plane and got to Hawaii, and she was there and picked me up and brought me right to the dock. And I got going to see him every day, and we talked and did therapy with him for a week. And then I started doing things you're supposed to do in recovery to stay sober. And I did. And then I needed one more to be convinced I was I had to get clean and sober. And I got back to Montreal. Jamie and I moved back here, started all over again. I pissed through any money I had in my divorce. I gave my wife the house and money, and I left there with not much and my pension, but I haven't even taken that yet. So, but I ended up going back to Montreal. I had an opportunity in the radio here. A friend of mine who worked here for years, Mitch Melnick, in the radio business. I used to go on a show all the time. He said, I think you'd be great in the radio. Why don't you come back? So I'm going to start all over again. Come back here, got the job, have my own radio show. And 2015, my mom was battling dementia. She ended up having a stroke. I ended up rushing home. And, I was doing the things I was supposed to be doing in recovery. And then I started to drift away from it some because life was good again, got complacent, and I detached from the things I was supposed to be doing to stay sober on a daily basis. And I ended up going back to Boston. My mom was in the hospital. My dad's there, my niece. And I called the kid that I used to get shit from because of the pain of dealing with my mother and seeing the way she was. She's going to die. And instead of facing it, I buckled under the pressure and I took the easy way out. And the kid drove right to the hospital. I grabbed a bag of that shit and I was going to go to my car and do it. And I wouldn't be here talking to you today if I did. I said, screw it, I'll go upstairs. There's a bathroom in the hall. And I did. And then I did a line, snorted a line of it. And I don't remember anything. Next thing I remember, I was in the emergency room where the nurse slapped me in the face saying, what did you take? What did you take? I had overdosed and went. I was gone. They put me on the gurney. My niece was there. And she ran and got the nurse and the doctor, and they worked on me on the way down to the emergency room. And they brought me back. They Narcaned me and worked on me, and I came back, and I was like, I was gone. And so that was my bottom right there, if you're wondering,
That's about as far as you can go without not
Right,
coming
really.
back, right?
I almost went to the other side, and that got my attention. I had to come back and certainly, tell Jamie. She wasn't my wife at the time. We only got married a year ago. We've been together 15 years and 16 years. And that was humbling and painful to tell her what happened. But in retrospect, that's what I needed to be where I am today. I struggled with the fact that for years I thought, if I can't drink anymore, I can never have fun. If I can't drink anymore, what am I going to do when I go to a wedding or I go out or I go for dinner? I can't drink anymore because I know where it takes me, right? I don't take the drink. The drink takes me. I don't take the drug takes me, and I'm gone. So, it really, that was the last straw for me, and that was a little over, like 9.5 years ago. I stay sober and clean from now to December 7th, and I do take it a day at a time today. I'll finally have 10 years, my longest stretch in the last 25. I should be 25 years sober, but I'm not, and that's okay. It took me what it took me to get where I am today, and I'm fine with it. So, and I pay attention to my recovery today. I'm active in my recovery. I work with other people in recovery, and so I finally got it. It's not a program. Recovery is not a program of intellect. It's a program of action, and I'm into action today like I've never been in recovery. So yeah, cool.
Well, that's great to hear that you're involved in that aspect. Our brother got into that too when he finally got himself clean. Unfortunately, he got into an accident, so it cut his endeavors short. But for the 4+ years that he was doing it, when we had his wake, 40, 50 people showed up that we didn't know, and we had a pretty big wake
Right.
for him because he was well known in the neighborhood, you know. And we're like, who the hell are these guys? Those are all the people he sponsored in 4 years' time, and it was a beautiful thing, really. It helped a lot. But you know, I'm sitting here with you and Ray and talking with you and just letting you explain these things that I think a lot of people know on the surface, but appreciating you getting in depth about it because it's important stuff. And I could see why. I watched that movie, The Last Gladiator, that you were involved in, which I don't know, what was it, 2012, 2013, something like that?
Yeah, it was back at the very beginning of my sobriety. Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember you saying that. You said it was in the beginning of your sobriety and your recovery from everything you were involved in and trying to fix. And watching it, you know, when I first got into it, I'm watching it expecting to see you and see Tony Twist and Todd Ewan and all those guys, and just like little snippets of everybody's career and how they did their jobs, and after the fact, now that you're retired, what it means like looking back. But the more I watched it, the more I realized how it became the Chris Nilan story almost. They really delved in on you, but I could see why.
Well, here's the thing about that. I had just gotten out of rehab. The guy who did it, Barry Reese, who's a good friend of mine today, he was a producer, and it was his idea. And Alex Gibney, New York guy, one of premier, foremost documentarians of our time, was the guy who did it and was directing it. And Alex, if you look, they struggled. First, they just wanted to talk to a bunch of fighters. But a lot of guys who they asked to interview wanted money, and they don't pay for documentaries. And I had just gotten out of treatment. I had nothing going on. And Barry Reese reached out to my daughter on Facebook. Can I get in touch with your father? We did. He talked to me. And then he went to Alex. He said, we got our guy. He'll do it, blah, blah, blah. And then they struggled at the end because he said there was so much in my story that he wished he just did it on me. And, you know, they had the other guys in there, which I thought was cool. I was fine with whatever they wanted to do. But afterwards, that's what he said. I want to get more into your story once we started hearing it. And Alex, you know, that I was so forthcoming with my addiction and my issues that he felt the same way, but they ended up keeping the other guys in it. And I thought it was just fine with that, but yeah. So, and I'm friends with Barry. When I got fired, I had my radio job here for 10 years. I got fired because I wouldn't get vaccinated. And Barry was the first guy to step up to the plate. He said, let's do a podcast. Come on, do a podcast. And he helped me get started. He had the production company in Pittsburgh. He's out of Pittsburgh, and a great guy and just a dear friend of mine to this day. And it goes back to that phone call and that reaching out to my daughter, you know. So, but yeah, and he's just been there for me ever since, and he was appreciative that I stepped up to the plate when he really didn't have anybody.
Well, you wind up with this podcast and you're killing it. I mean, I watch it as often as I can. You have the greatest guests. And like you were saying before in some of the stories of your career, where you see guys, your enemies on the ice, and then you see them later in life, and you might have even hated a guy, but you turn out to be a good guy and you become friendly later on after the fact. You could see it, even if it doesn't come out, you could see it in your podcast with these other players that you played against that you have on. Most of the time, they're fellow tough guys like yourself, guys you may have even locked horns with on more than one occasion, but you can see that respect, that camaraderie. Even it's just I love the title you gave it, Raw Knuckles. I mean, your knuckles, but it's more raw than the knuckles after a game. It's like it's raw, being raw and honest. And tell us, just get a little bit into the actual podcast too, because I think everybody should really subscribe and watch it.
Yeah, I just got going on it, and I love talking to guys that played the game, been through some shit, and either way, everybody's been through something. Doesn't matter who you are, and I like getting into that aspect of it with guys. Not just all about, what was your toughest fight, what was your biggest goal, did you win the cup, how did it feel, and although that comes into it at some point, I like to get a little deep and a little more personal and find out a little more about guys and how'd you get like this? How'd you be the guy to fight, or how'd you your rise to the NHL? Like, what was it like growing up for you? What, a little more personal that way, and none of the crazy shit. And I know that appeals to some people and others it doesn't. But I like that aspect of it. I like to, especially being in recovery, I like to find out a little more about people. Always have on a more personal basis, and some people are more forthcoming than others. And there's also ways to maybe get people who aren't to bring it out of them. And I think there's some skill set in that. I've been very open and honest about my stuff, so it's not difficult. Just ask me, I'm usually going to tell you. Nothing's off limits to me. And if something is, you'll know it. But really, I just think if I'm not able to be honest and open about where I've been and what's happened to me, I don't have that ability to be able to help other people. And I'll tell you, last night I was in Newfoundland. And, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And this was a real God shot for me. And I've had a few of them in sobriety. But I came back from that concert and everybody's drinking and having fun. And I had a great time. There's some young kids. We were a large group on a bus, and one of them fun buses with the music going, and kids are all drinking. And, it was after the golf tournament, and they were having fun. I was sitting there watching all, and thoroughly enjoyed myself. I had a great time. Went to the concert. It was in a big open field. And I'm watching, but people are having a blast. They're having fun. You see a lot of people like pie-eyed. Some people just dancing and enjoying a couple of cocktails. And no judging whatsoever. And we leave, and I get back to the hotel. It's around 12:30, 1:45. Take the elevator up, take a right, take another right, and a guy comes out of his room. Young kid. Not when I say young kid, maybe he's 35 years old. And I walk by him. I'm going to my room. And I hear, "Hey, Chris." And I turn around. I said, "Hey, what's up?" He said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "I never got the chance to tell you because I never saw you again. But 4 years ago, you were at a golf tournament with me in New Brunswick, and I was all fucked up. And you looked me right in the eye and told me it's never too late to get well. If you want to do something about your life, you can do it." Because we had apparently had this conversation, and that's how I ended it. He said, "I'm 3.5 years sober today." Now, what are the chances of me getting off that elevator at that hour, walking by this kid, him recognizing me? Okay, I get why he recognized me, because it was certainly, well, he's a hockey fan. One, I played in a golf tournament with him, but big hockey, like Canada, people are nuts about hockey. So no matter where you go, someone's going to know who you are. And what are the chances of that happening? And when I went I went in the room, I couldn't believe it. I called my wife and I told her the story, and she said, "It's incredible. It's incredible." And then today I get a message from a sober guy from Boston who I sends me shit now and again. Not shit, sends me good stuff in recovery. And here's what the quote was: "Always know this. You might be the reason someone realizes they can change their lives and recover." I got that this morning when I got off the plane. So
Yeah, that doesn't happen by accident.
no,
No.
like, again, I finally, and I don't sit back on my laurels, but I've never been as at peace in my life with things, and my life is good. I have what I need in life. I'm not chasing anything. I'm not, life is good, and I'm living life. I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and I just want to keep going the way I am as far as my recovery, and I will. And I have my bottom.
Yeah, and we don't doubt it for a minute that you're on a good path and strong enough to stick with it. When you see that you're helping someone else, I mean, you get the feeling if you're at if you're speaking engagements or some kind of a charitable event, but when you actually get to meet people who you have helped or who have heard you and said it has helped them, that's got to be able to buoy you and to keep you going.
Yeah, it's an awesome feeling to help other people like that, because I know what it's like to be stuck in that. And when you're stuck in that and you don't know what you don't know, and you have a difficult time being honest with yourself. If you can't get honest with yourself, you lie to yourself before you lie to anybody else. And when you keep lying to yourself like I can handle this, not a big deal, I'm good. No, you're not. And when I got honest with myself and realized I had a problem, I had to win this one, I had to surrender, not keep fighting. There's no way I was going to be able to have any type of life other than a life of misery and pain and anguish. And yeah, it's no way to live. And I was living that way. It's not no way to live. And it's a great feeling to be able to help other people. And, it's attraction, not promotion. And I don't promote. I just go about my life. Like that kid I met at the golf course, we were engaged talking with each other, and we got talking about certain things, and he knew I was sober, and that's how the conversation started, because he knew I was sober, because it's well documented. And sure enough, when I told him he could get well, and then he did. Like, I looked at him last night, the kid was like, he was beaming, and it was such a cool feeling to be able to know that one little conversation we had when he was absolutely out of his being mind,
Stuck.
it sunk in. It sunk in.
Yeah.
It sunk in. So
I'm with you, man. I believe the same thing. There's no such thing as coincidences, and the other saying is God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, even though sometimes you have to handle some really heavy shit.
yeah.
But a lot of times, and we talked about this after my brother passed, and he actually said it during his wake. You go through some things sometimes, and people wonder why me and why are things so terrible, or what terrible things happen sometimes to good people. And when you can turn it around and have that experience to be able to turn that around and help other people because you've been through it, you've got the strength to get through it, and you have the experience to help somebody else through it. I think that's a big reason why a lot of these things happen. And like I said, there's no coincidences about that.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So you have the raw knuckles, and then you went into the movie, right? You have the big Chris Nilan story that's
Yeah, it
out
wasn't a
now?
movie. It was not a movie. It was
Speaking?
yeah, I'm part of the Barry Lawrence Eddie Mental Health Foundation here in Montreal. I'm an ambassador for them. Barry's a guy who owns a president and CEO of the largest insurance company here in Canada called BFL. And Barry reached out to me about coaching a charity hockey game. I met him. He asked me if I would become part of his mental health foundation. I did. He brought me on as an ambassador, and we started talking. And he asked me if I would tell my life story on stage, and
Okay.
and that's what we did. It was kind of like what Mike Tyson did, but not so much comedic.
Hmm.
It was basically telling my story, how I got to the NHL, my childhood, how I grew up, a little bit on the NHL stuff, some of the craziness, and then what happened to me in retirement. And that was, we did 4 shows in 8 days, and then there were 300 people a night for 2 hours. Each show I was on the stage for 2 hours.
Are you going to continue on to other cities, or was that just?
Well, they're talking about it. We're working on some stuff now. I'm doing a smaller theater here on August 17th out in a little town called Knowlton, at the Knowlton Theater. And then they're talking about going to maybe Ottawa, Toronto, Boston. They're not. We're gonna see. I'm open to it, and yeah, it was nerve-wracking to do that. Like, first night was all, black tie affair and all that, big dinner, and it was really I was nervous as all hell before I went out, but once I got going, once I got through the opening of it, I was okay, and it was the same thing each night. I was really nervous, like before a game, and then once I punched somebody in the mouth, I was okay.
Well, speaking of that, if we could, I definitely want to touch base on what you're doing now and moving forward. But going back to hockey for a minute, the NHL today compared to when you were playing, so many rule changes, so many different things going on now that sometimes, like even like Ray and I, we grew up in the 70s and 80s watching the game like you did and when you played. And some of it has me shaking my head. What about you as a former player? Likes and dislikes.
I try not to be one of them. But, I've always been opinionated, and certainly when I look at the game, it's fast. The kids are uber talented. There's reasoning for that, right? No red line, equipment, the way they train today, the way they take care of their bodies, all those things are so different from what we did. I think certainly they are uber talented, a lot of these kids. And then there's kids with the average talent that are able to play 3rd and 4th line minutes, but they're still really talented kids. It's a lot younger game today, younger players. I'm happy hockey players are finally getting paid to play hockey, like getting paid real money. And that's the health of the game. That's a credit to, whether we like Gary Bettman or not, he's done a hell of a job getting a game on the United States on TV. Things that a lot of people didn't think were going to happen. He's done a hell of a job that way. The health of the league, and financially, the league's in really good spot, right? Hockey is. Everybody thought it was just always going to be Canada or regional in the U.S., and now it's, look where it is, expansion. Does it actually make the game itself better? Not necessarily. But still love playoff hockey, right? I think there's like a lot of people, there are too many games. You know, I think it's to see guys playing 4 games a week. They're like, okay, they have their own planes, they stay in the nicest hotels, they get fed, they get all these things, but still, I don't care how good you take care of yourself, to play 4 games a week, and that it's such a rigorous schedule. Like, the product every night is not going to be where maybe it could be if these guys got a little more downtime. But with the money that's in it, ownership doesn't want to do that. They're adding games, for Christ's sake, right?
Right.
And then, you know, hockey at the end of June. It's ridiculous, I think, that part of it. I really do. Now, you know, they talk about concussions. I'm in the concussion program at Boston University. I donated my brain. And Bob Probert's wife actually prodded me to go do it, and I did. I'm glad I did, but they talk about concussions. The league didn't want to recognize any of that because they don't want any liability. I get it. But, you know, I had that lawsuit, which I wasn't a part of and wouldn't have been. I accepted what I did for a living, and no one made me do anything I didn't want to do. So, yeah, I wasn't going to get involved in that thing at all. The lawyer was after me to, you know, wanted me to be his megaphone for it. There's no way I was going to do it. But we talk about the health of the players, and, you know, I've heard other people talk about it, the red line, you know. And I know the league doesn't want it because they want fast, they want speed, they want collisions. They don't want fighting, though. We don't want fighting, and they don't. It's still in there, but it's not like it was, and it never will be again. And that's okay. I don't care about seeing any brawls anymore or anything like that, but I don't have a problem with you guys dropping their glove. And
do you have a problem with the way the scrums are constantly now? Sticks still in hands,
Guys can't
gloves still
drop
up.
their sticks.
that's what it is. That's what it is. And, you know, it's that, yeah, they kind of handcuff you. The guys are worried about to do it, and they know when to do it. Some guys, it's okay, you let them go. Like, but, you know, I look at the red line being in, and these guys, if they are so talented, right? They're so talented. You put the red line in, the league is just so scared of the logjam again, the Devils and the trap. And everybody says, oh, Lemaire played boring hockey, but you know what? He got a team to play as a team. It was actually very smart hockey when you're going up against teams that are maybe better than you on paper, maybe faster than you, have more talent. But today, these kids are so talented. I'd like to kind of see them pass their way, come up the ice together, and pass their way through any defense that's there. And I think, honestly, too, it would create more of a forecheck. You'd see more of a forecheck guys coming, getting the puck pass. Now you're with a D-man, going back with him for the puck. You have a chance to get a forecheck going and a cycle going. You see the long pass now. They chip it. Like, you see it every game. It's a bad thing, but I don't think it helps the game be what the game really is or was at a time. And maybe the league doesn't want that, but I look at it like you see it every game, every team. Stretch pass, go as fast as you can, go get the puck, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. And there are situations where certainly forechecks are there, but I think if you're worried about the health of the players really on a whole and the health of the game, I don't know. I would like to see them at least try it in preseason and see what it looks like, see what it looks like. But
not a bad experiment.
Yes.
So talking current stuff. And this is normally an Islander-centric podcast, but you're our first non-Islander guy we've had on with no ties. But for us, you are that special. So that's why we had you on.
Well, thanks.
And so happy to have you here. But I just wanted to ask you if, looking at current events, have you been following, the draft recently and the Islanders getting that first pick and changing GMs from Lamoriello over to Darsh and things that have been falling into place for them? Have you been watching that?
Yeah. Listen, Matthew, smart kid, bright kid, went down to Tampa there, learned under Julien Brisebois, who started here in Montreal as assistant GM with Bob Gainey. And then, was down there with doing his thing. And with Eisenman, they won the Cups. They had success. So it's, you're a bright kid and you pick up on things and you learn like he has. I think there's good things to come for Matthew and the Islanders. It's time for that change. And Lou certainly has done great for the game. It's unbelievable what he did over the years, Lou Lamoriello. And yeah, maybe it's his time to move on. And he has, but will he work in hockey again? Not too sure. But I love Lou. Lou's an awesome guy. And he's helped a lot of people, that guy. And he's had a lot of success. Really, he's a sweetheart of a man. I know a lot of people think he's a hot ass, and he is, but he does have a heart. I know that. I've followed the Islanders stuff, and we'll see. Proof will be in the pudding down the road. It's like here in Montreal, right? Bergevin years never got really where they got to the Stanley Cup final, but that wasn't happening as far as the Stanley Cup. But they're rebuilding this team, I think, in a great way. And I think Matthew understands what he has to do there. And listen, you've been through a lot of pain there. You had a lot of great years, right, with early 80s, those great teams. And Montreal had so many good years. And there's been a lot of pain here for a long time. And these guys here are doing it right now. And now you got somebody in there younger, fresh set of eyes on things. And you're going to just have to see how these guys here, Gorton and Hughes, man, they accumulated draft picks. They were patient. And the fan base was patient too, which is good, because up here, it's
tough.
That's all it is. Yeah.
This is not a hockey town. Montreal is not a hockey town. It's a Habs town. That's it. Bottom line. And everything is Habs. So guys have done a wonderful job. They've it's really they got a lot of assets that, and I say they need to be tougher, and they'll get there. I think they know what they need. They're not stupid. Jeff Gordon's a smart guy. How can he not be? He's from Boston. And Hughes, Montreal guy, but lived down in Boston. A great agent, understood both sides of the game. So it's nice to see. And I'm sure, like knowing Matthew is a bright kid, and I think surround yourself with the right people, you can go places. So we'll see what happens there. But it's gonna take time.
Yeah, no doubt. We're all optimistic down here too. So it's good to hear it from you. One thing, you just triggered my memory for a second when you were talking about the old Islander teams. You actually came up the year that the Islanders, the year after Montreal wins the Cup, the Habs win the Cup. The Islanders came first overall that year, and they blew it against the Rangers, right?
Yeah.
So the following year is when they started that, dynasty trek, and that was your first year in the league. What are your memories about being a rookie and then a young NHLer playing against those Islander teams?
Yeah, they were just incredible how strong they were and how tough they were, and the talent, Bossy, Gillies. I always say it. People say, "Who's the toughest guy in the league?" And I always say they're all, and they are. All the guys who did that job are tough. Dave Brown, Dave Semenko, O'Reilly, Jonathan, Secord. Just rattle them off. They're all tough. Any guy who does that job, you have to be tough to do that job. Proby, this is all of them. But Clark Gillies, he didn't do it all the time. But boy, when he did it, just ask Ed Hospital.
Yeah.
And really a lot of respect for that guy, and God rest his soul.
Had gotten to a point, in his career that he didn't really have to do much anymore. There would be a scrum, and he would skate in, and guys would just part.
Well, I remember
Moses.
Remember fighting O'Reilly there. O'Reilly came back at him. He went and got stitched up. O'Reilly came right back again. He flew him. As tough as Gillies was, O'Reilly just coming back at him after getting all stitched up and getting ripped open again. God bless him. I love that guy too. All those guys,
tough boys.
Yeah, it was impressive stuff, But those Islander teams, man, they earned it. They deserved it. They were, Torrey, incredible. What he did there, Alaba, just putting that all together. You get guys who figure it out. And today, it's even more of a chore today with the salary cap and juggling all that shit. Back in the day, you didn't have to worry about, just here's your contract, shut up.
Yeah, and you're it, and you're here until we say different.
I mean, there's 16 guys who played on all 4 Stanley Cup teams for the Islanders. Yeah. You'd never see that ever again. It'll be tough enough for another team to win that many cups in a row or as many, playoff series in a row. But to have that many guys stick around for that long, and it's just not possible these days with the free agency and the salary cap and all that other stuff, and how fluid the whole process is. So it's definitely a different era and a different game today for sure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Chris Nux, if we may call you Nux, now that we're all buddies. We want to thank you for coming on. We know we're keeping an eye on the time for you as well. We know you have somewhere else to be. We thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we let you go, just tell us what you're involved in now, the Raw Knuckles podcast and that Chris Nilan story, the Traveling Roadshow that it may become. How do people get access to all that? And, just let everybody know right here and now.
Yeah, anything. I got my website here, knucklesisland.com. You can find out anything on that. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, all that stuff. My lovely wife takes care of a lot of that. I can open the computer and turn it on and stuff, and I can navigate pretty good. But honestly, I have a tough time with social media, doing all the things, and always having to put something. She's good at it. Every time I go somewhere, take some videos, take some pictures. I'm like, that's the last thing I'm thinking on. Let's go. But I do. I get it done. She always has to remind me. But yeah, I just staying busy. I'm an ambassador with the Canadians now. First English guy ever. Never mind English guy, first American ever. As an ambassador with the Habs, which is quite an honor for me to be an ambassador with a team that, when you think of the ambassadors they've had, from Jean Beliveau, Guy Lafleur, Conway, Ray Jeannot, the list goes on. Rashad's hello, and to have that honor of being part of this organization and still connected to it in a way. It's the one I never wanted to play for another team after I played for this one, and to be back and part of the organization once again, although not a huge role, but it's a huge role for me.
Well, everything you've done that we all know who follow you And after listening to you today, there's no doubt that everything that you've done and accomplished, you've earned, and sometimes the hard way, but you've earned it. And you're a hell of an example. You're a hell of an example. You're an inspiration. We really, really feel lucky that we got you to come on the show. You were a target of ours, and we really thank you.
Yeah, Chris, really appreciate you coming on and being so open about everything that you've done in the past, particularly your personal stuff. Not everybody could do that, and I'm sure whoever listens is really gonna get something out of it. So really appreciate that.
All right, Steve, Ray, good luck with the podcast. I appreciate it, and again, my condolences about your brother. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
good luck
Thank
with
you very
everything
much.
moving forward.